Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next installment of Let's Go for a Walk. So, on today's walk, we are going to discuss a topic which I think is really important for people to understand and also to think about, during their dog's normal daily activities. And this is something which can really, really make or break your training because it has to do with consistency. But indirectly. So the point that we are going to be discussing today is that your dog is not just learning during training sessions. Your dog is learning all the time. And they are learning more if the behaviors that they are partaking in are particularly effective for either completing some kind of, innate purpose, or if the behaviors are inducing a lot of feel-good hormones or neurotransmitters. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. But basically, a lot of people plan structured, systematic training sessions where they are going to work on a particular skill for 15 to 30 minutes, a couple times a week, maybe every day, right? And a lot of people are busy, so the amount of time people can spend in these sessions really varies. But these sessions are often very controlled, right? The environment is predictable. The dog is locked in a room, maybe, with no other stimuli around it, no distractions. And people see progress during their training sessions. And then the dog kind of starts falling off the rails during the week or when the dog is not training. And they keep going back and they're my dog just keeps regressing back to the same spot, or maybe they're even getting worse. I don't understand why that is. We are dedicating time to this skill. Well, not always, but oftentimes a big part of that is that your dog is practicing the behavior other places, and they are learning when they are practicing it in a way that you are not controlling. So, some examples of this are greeting people appropriately at the front door, or greeting people appropriately on the leash, or barking at the delivery driver when they pull in the driveway, or maybe even barking at every single car that passes by, or, fence fighting with a neighbor's dog, right? These are all situations which are relatively common, and people will work on those things, and then the dog will still be able to partake in those behaviors when nobody is watching them. So, for instance, if your dog charges the window or the door every time the delivery driver drops off an Amazon package or whatever, and you're okay, you're working on these things, you're even having people maybe drive up to your house and carry boxes up to your door so you can work on it. But the issue is, firstly, that is awesome, but it doesn't necessarily look like real life. And when you go away, right? I mean, when I say it doesn't look like real life, I'm saying you do have to work up to it looking like real life. You can't just stay in this sort of, staged position, I suppose. But the problem is, especially with this kind of a thing, is you can be having these awesome training sessions doing these things that you are really pouring your heart and soul into. And then you leave, the dog is uncrated, and every time somebody drops off a package at your front door, the dog gets the chance to just charge the door and bark and jump and growl. And then the delivery driver leaves. So really, what is being reinforced here? What is that dog learning? Not to mention, getting back to neurotransmitters and hormones, the kinds of things that are associated with these very intense behavioral responses and very intense emotional responses are usually intrinsically rewarding and very well remembered. A lot of the times they are more remembered than what you practice in your training sessions because the dog is already in a state of arousal. changes the way that their brain functions, and it changes the way that they remember things. So it is really important when you are trying to achieve any sort of goal, primarily using obedience, for instance, or developing new protocols to fix or change behaviors in your dog, that they're not being allowed to partake in these behaviors the rest of the time when they're not training. Because if you're dedicating 15 or 30 minutes a few days a week to helping this, but like what is happening all of the rest of the time could like directly contradicts or conflicts with this. I mean, you know, what is going to be the most powerful influencer? It is unlikely to be your training sessions. And so you might find in these situations that you make progress during the training session and you think this is really great. And then you go to the next one and it seems like the dog has unlearned everything that you worked on or it got worse. So tips to resolve this, there is not a single tip because every situation is different. But it is really, really important to observe what your dog is doing when you are not training. And I mean, really observing it and taking notes of like common trends and what things are going on that may sabotage your training efforts. You can even write them down. Keep a journal. Behavior journals are so useful. A log, you can do like a Google Doc these days. I mean, anything. And that way you can be like, okay, this is something that we need to change. Maybe we need to change the dog's environment to make progress with the thing we actually need to make progress with. All right, so that is my talk for today. I think this topic is just like so important because it is not worth, well, it's not that it's not worth your time to do the training, but it is so frustrating for people to like be doing so much work and maybe pouring a lot of money into training and not getting results. And a lot of times this is why. And it all comes back down to consistency. Consistency is imperative for learning in dogs. And obviously it's much more complex than that. But basically, when you are trying to teach a dog a new response, right, things need to remain as consistent as possible. Because if they are getting mixed signals, they're just going to keep doing the thing that is coming naturally to them, which oftentimes is the thing that we are trying to change. If you like what you saw today or heard today, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.